Okay, now we're in Photoshop. Let's go to File, Open, and open the folder with all of our renders. And let's just select them all and click Enter to import. And we'll want the alpha channel data as transparency for now. Okay. And so now we have them imported into 3 separate files. So let's just select our base. And let's select the ambient occlusion. Click Ctrl A to select everything and Ctrl C to copy. Go into our base, click Ctrl V to paste, and now go to our Z depth, click Ctrl plus A to select everything and Ctrl plus C to copy, and back here Ctrl V to paste. And now feel free to close your other 2 open images. So now we have them all in the same layer structure. So first thing we want to do is select our ambient occlusion and change it to multiply. And actually, a lot of the blending modes are currently disabled, so we might as well just change the image mode to 16 bits channel, and let's not merge. So now we have a lot more options for working with these. So our ambient occlusion, let's set it to multiply, and if I just fill screen to make this slightly bigger, we can instantly see that this adds quite a lot of detail around the edges of all of the objects. So that's quite cool. And now let's select our Z depth and change it to screen. So this is a little bit too much, but we can adjust it by creating a curves adjustment layer and clicking Ctrl Alt plus G to parent it to our Z depth layer. And let's just drag this down a little bit. And this looks quite a bit more like what we wanted. Okay, cool. So as we can see here in the background, we currently have some transparent areas that are not filled by geometry. So for now, let me just create a new layer, put it at the bottom, and fill it with white. Okay, cool. Okay, so on this first trip into Photoshop, what is my objective here? Well, I would like to identify some of the problems that I currently see with the image, which were maybe not so visible when I was just working in 3D within Clarice. This is because while I was in Clarice, I could not see a live render, or not a live render, a complete render. Therefore, it was hard for me to determine where some parts of geometry might have worked better and where some of it might not have worked. So for example, having gone into Photoshop here, I can instantly see some areas that I think are a little bit problematic. So for example, let me just bring this a little bit more like this, so I'll illustrate slightly better. Yep. So currently, what I'm not liking and what I think is interfering with the composition of the image are some of these parts here. So for example, I think this whole object is currently jutting out too much. I don't want as much of this really, because the way I have my composition working is that it's layers that are being revealed as we go along, and I feel like this kind of interferes a little bit right now. So let me show you what I mean. If I select my clone stamp tool and I'll select a little bit here and I'll paint this over. I think if I do something like this, this instantly works a lot better, right? We have a better view here, and you know, maybe something similar could be done here, or we could enlarge this, maybe de-emphasize this a little bit, something like this, right? Just not make this as obvious. Another problem that I'm seeing very instantly is that this whole area is not working very well at all. In fact, I think it kind of distracts from the image because it's too complicated. The viewer's eye is not sure what is going on here. Are those buildings? What are those details? It's really not clear. I think we could patch this up a little bit better. So this is a problem area. And going into Photoshop like this, it's much easier for me to identify these areas. So I think, here we could maybe fill this in a little bit, maybe do a little bit of this, something like that. Right? Just to make it slightly more conforming with the rest of the image. So if I do this, you can see instantly that it works quite a little bit better. Another thing that I think doesn't work too well, I'll just point this out, is this whole area here. So first of all, I think this is too straight. I really like how here the composition works like this. It sort of goes outwards in waves, almost in a circle. Whereas here it stops straight. So I think if I can try to maybe do a little bit of this, try to make it a little bit more circular, that would work better, Maybe if I do something like this. Maybe that's slightly better. But another problem I have with it is that I think these details here are a little bit too repetitive. The scale of all of these pieces is pretty much the same. If you look here, they're all kind of the same size, and I think I could achieve a little bit of variety. What I like here, for example, is that I have a piece size like this, then a bigger one, then some smaller ones, then some bigger ones. I think it works a lot better already. And this problem is also quite present here. If you look, there's a lot going on here, but not very much that is interesting. I think I could really add some interest to really draw the viewer into this area of the image, just like here. Currently, the whole foreground is not really working all that well. It's quite boring, right? One thing that I quite like to do when I'm working like this is to actually give myself notes. So, for example, here I've kind of drawn over, so if I pick this project up again in the morning, tomorrow, or something like that, this helps me remember what my problems with it were. But I'm quite a big fan of, writing some notes, for example. Let's scribble over this, right? To repetitive. And this will kind of help me, and I do this a lot. If you look at my work in progress files, they're full of notes all around, and this is just my personal way of remembering. If it doesn't help you, it doesn't help you, but I think it's quite useful, because it's all of these little things that you remember to fix, and then you might forget in the future, so I think it's a good idea. Another thing that I quite like to do when I'm at this stage, for example, is maybe even earlier, when you're first doing the very initial blocking, and I for sure did it with this image as well, is to just take your whole entire image, and here I've clicked to apply image. You can go to image, apply image, to basically merge all of the layers, or you can do this by creating a new layer, clicking Ctrl A to select everything, and then Ctrl Shift C to copy everything, and Ctrl Shift V to paste everything. So now you have your whole image on one layer. What I often do is flip it, and again, this gives me a lot of perspective on things that aren't quite working yet. For example, I think if I use my dodge tool quickly to highlight, I think this area could receive a bit more attention, for example. I think that looks quite a bit better when lit up, right? And maybe a little bit more here too. And that is something to consider later. And working like this, I think, is really helpful by being able to flip it. Not just sideways, but for example, let's flip it vertically, see what we have here. And this gives you a whole new fresh look at your image, because your eyes are not used to seeing this. Your previous image, your eyes are used to seeing it, so they might forget about some of the mistakes. They get used to them, and you're going to miss them, but someone else looking at the image will see them instantly. So a way for you to get the same kind of ability to see your mistakes very quickly is to do some flipping. And this is an old trick, but genuinely it helps. And especially in the idea searching stage, this is fantastic, right? Especially with this kind of scattering concept, because there's just a lot of detail, but it doesn't have to be anything. This can be anything at this stage, right? But for now, let's just undo this and look at these changes. And let's go back into Clarice, I think, and have a look at actually adjusting these with the tools that I've shown you previously, like the property pane tool, which will allow me to erase some of these parts and enlarge and make some of them smaller and adjust their properties so that we can achieve the same results in 3D that we currently have in 2D. So let's jump back in.
Okay, now that we're back in Clarice, let's start making these changes. So here's one bit of advice, maybe. If we compare the rendering times between our ambient occlusion, our z-depth, and our base render, we'll find that the z-depth renders very, very quickly, as well as the ambient occlusion. But the base render, because it has to calculate the lights, takes quite a while. So for these changes, we can see the silhouettes of what we're working with really well. For example, this was a problem area, as was that. This was a problem area. So we don't need to see all of the detail seen in this render in order to make those changes. We can instead just use the set render. So let's have those two disabled, and let's just work with our depth paths enabled. So when we make changes there, we can see them in our render very quickly. And it's crucial because in the 3D view here, it is quite confusing. It's difficult to see what's going on. So first of all, let's have a look at these. This, and this. Okay. So if I go to my background city here, it can be a little bit difficult to find the areas that you want to work on when you have a city this big, but okay. I can already see the problem in this scatterer. This area is this area. Okay, so because I've baked this scatterer, I can just go in and select my baked point cloud and select my property paintbrush. And let's just enlarge this slightly. Let's look here. And let's select opaque scaling. Let's go into the property paint settings. And let's have a look in here. Let's set it to, I guess, add. Okay. And let's select baked scaling. And let's type in some values. Let's do -1, -1, and -1. And this should add -1 to all of our scaling attributes of the scattered objects. So we can just have a look. If I paint here. Okay. Yep, that appears to be working. Actually, I might Control Z this. Sorry, I'll undo the last few steps. And I think I'll do it here. It's a little bit hit or miss. Actually, let's go to erase. Let's just erase whatever we don't want instead. We have to be careful not to erase something that we would like to keep. Okay, so that's gone. This can be quite tricky to get these angles. Sometimes it doesn't want to be deleted. It doesn't seem to recognize whatever we're trying to erase sometimes. So we got rid of most. Okay, there's still a little bit here. Cool. We got rid of that. So now instead, let's go to add. And here, let's scale something up here. That's a bit too much. We want maybe, we want to add 0.2 to all of the values. So I'll make them actually slightly larger. And by making them larger, I can connect all of that and achieve my circle shape that I kind of want to have there. Just a circle in the viewer's attention. So I'm kind of hoping to join these into one big blob maybe. Slightly here. Okay. I think now, if we look here, these shapes are much more unified than they were before. That's perfect. Maybe, actually, let's make them slightly smaller. So let's just do -0.2. And let's just shrink them slightly. I might have went a little bit too far. Now I've got floating bits again. Okay. Let's erase them. Okay. That's a lot better. Okay. So now I think this area here might be this area here. So let's find which scatterer it is. It's this one. Let's select the big point cloud. And here let's go to add. And just slightly shrink it down. It can be a little bit tricky. It's not a very accurate way of working. So I want to shrink this slightly, yeah. Okay, that's not much better. It conforms to this circle shape that I'm trying to make. And the last one is, where is it? Can be hard to tell. Is it this? Let's check. Damn, I think I lost it. Yeah. For a moment, let's look through the render cam. Where is this bit? It can be quite difficult to tell. So if you get lost in your project, it happens to me too, don't worry. Maybe not that. Let's back out again. Not there. Oh, yep, that's the one. That's the one. Found it. So let's just shrink this down a bit. Yep. Let's just reduce that. Not that much. Okay, cool. I don't want this gap at the top that we see here. Yes, see at the top of this little window, that bit. So let me just add 0.2, 0.2, and 0.2. And let's just try to fill it here somewhere. Far too much. Maybe something here. This can be a little bit trial and error. It depends on how complex your scene is that you're trying to create. Okay, let me change that to 0. Just start trying to grow these very slightly so I don't ruin the whole scene. I'm just trying to fill that little gap. And we're pretty close now. Okay, cool. That'll do. So now we have that filled. That's acceptable. Another area is this that we want to improve. So let's zoom back out. And here, let's go to our screen right city and select our screen right city scatter object. I've taken the liberty of naming all of my point clouds and scatterers just to keep it a little bit cleaner. You don't have to do this, but if you're working on a big project, it can help. It can get quite confusing, and it doesn't take long to do. So I want to be working on this. Yeah, that's exactly it. Let's zoom out. And I'm just going to try to create a little bit of variety, because all of these are very similar in terms of size, shape, distribution, and it's a little bit monotonous. So let's try to be very gradual with this and improve it that way. So let's see about painting a little bit there. Select our scaling. Change the values to 0.2 again. And remember, when we're trying to create a more circular shape with this building, in order to draw the eye more in towards the center of the image, let's try to just expand some of these. Maybe not in Y, just so it's scaling sideways. Oh, that's quite the opposite of what I want. Okay, let's do -2, -0.2. And here in the middle, let's scale them down. Actually, how about we move the whole thing a little bit? Something like this. And this should now be a little bit easier. If we go back to our property paint tool, and let's just increase this to positive values again. And let's just have a look. Nope, not quite it. Not quite what I want. Okay, let's increase the size of these. And let's move this down a little bit. Okay, so now that shape is quite a bit more similar to what I want. So now let's maybe scale these ones up at the top a little bit. Takes quite a bit of playing around to get exactly what you want. Let's stretch this a bit maybe. And let's make these slightly smaller maybe. Yeah, okay. Maybe let's go into one of our scatterers at the top. This one. And let's have a look at scaling up some of these blocks in that corner. Just trying to fill that little space a bit more to close off a part of the image. Okay, yeah. So now we have a nice round shape here. And basically the eye does not stray out of the image when looking at that. So I'm trying to really get all of these to circle in towards the focal point of the image. So now all of these main flaws have been addressed. I still would like to get some better definition here. So let's look at this scatterer. And that is our screen left foreground tower. The bottom part, I believe. Okay. So let's have a look at, oops, let's go in. Let's have a look at adjusting some of these. Oh, here's a problem that you might run into, and this can be quite annoying. When you pick your scatterer and then move it, the point cloud can end up quite far away from where your scatterer is. So that is my mistake here, and it's something maybe you should watch out for when you're moving your big scatterers. Make sure that you move the point cloud with it, which I haven't done here. So let's see if I can fix it now by translating it. But that moves everything. If I click that, that's still a problem. Okay, not too big of a problem. Let's just have a look at adjusting it here. So basically I'll have to paint over the point cloud here instead of on my actual scatterer down below. But I can see exactly what's going on. So for this, actually, let's switch to our ambient occlusion, as that might be a better representation of what I'm doing. So let's just click that button to render a region. And let's just render this corner of the image. That's all we care about right now. And let's adjust this again. Okay, so actually, I don't want to be adjusting this in the Y. I don't want to make it taller. I just want to bring these little houses a little bit more out.